Hi, I'm Jason Walcott, and this is Walcott Fine Art. In today's video, I'm going to talk to you all about mediums. Mediums are materials that you can mix with your oil paint to make it easier to use. So I'm going to show you how I make the medium I use, as well as talk about its ingredients, and also show you some other mediums that you can try as well. So, let's go! Welcome back to my channel, everyone, and today we're going to be taking a look at mediums. So, as I said in the introduction, a medium is basically just something that you mix with your paint to make it easier to work with. It's not a magic formula for making your paintings better. The only way you can do that is through practice, but it will make the paint itself easier to manipulate. So that's basically what it's for. And so let's start out by taking a look at some traditional mediums that have been around for many, many centuries. And of course, the simplest and most basic medium that you can use to add to your paint is plain old linseed oil. Linseed oil is the traditional oil that is used to make oil paint. Sometimes they use walnut oil or safflower oil, but most of the time it's linseed oil. So plain old linseed oil by itself can be used as a medium. The best kind to get is this cold pressed linseed oil, because that means they just press it right from the seeds of the flax plant without using any chemicals to extract it. The cold pressed is a little bit more expensive, but it's a little bit better quality. And really quick as an aside, I just wanted to point something out that might be a helpful thing to you. I detest these adult caps that they do put on these bottles, where you have to press it down and turn it, especially with art supplies like oils and varnish and stuff, because what happens is the oil or the varnish gets around the rim of the bottle, and then this gets stuck, and you can't, no matter how hard you press down, you can't get it to turn. So obviously if you have kids in the house, you don't want to do this. But if you're single or you live in an adults only house, what I always do, you can get a screwdriver or some kind of flat, thick instrument. You can actually shove it up under the cap and this top piece and pry that off. You can actually pry that off, and what you'll be left with is this, and then this piece underneath just acts like a normal screw top on a normal bottle. So then you won't have to worry about that stupid child safety thing anymore. And I don't have any kids in this house, so those things just drive me crazy, so I always pry those off. So that's just a little hack for you that you might find useful. So you can try basic plain old cold pressed linseed oil. Another medium you might want to try is stand oil. Now, stand oil is linseed oil that has been boiled, but it's been boiled in a way that it's not like the hardware boiled linseed oil. This has been boiled in a closed container without any oxygen. So there's no oxidation or burning that occurs to the oil, because it's basically like heated in a vacuum. And that causes the oil to get thicker, more like a honey consistency, as you can see here. Now, obviously, I don't use stand oil. I haven't even opened this bottle. I just bought it because I thought, well, what the heck, I'll have some on hand. Stand oil takes much longer to dry, but the advantage is it gives your oil colors more translucency. And as it does dry, it will tend to flatten out and make a very smooth, almost enamel-like finish. So if you use stand oil to mix with your paints, you're going to lose your brush strokes, because they'll kind of like level out and become smooth as the paint dries. And stand oil is good for glazing. It's a really good glazing medium. So that's probably when you'd want to use that. You might not necessarily want to use it for alla prima painting, when you do a painting all in one sitting. So the traditional medium that I use, that I make myself, is the traditional standard painting medium that's been around for hundreds of years, and it's a mixture of equal parts of 1/3 linseed oil, 1/3 pure gum spirits of turpentine, and 1/3 Dammar varnish. And you can just take a little, like this is like a little coffee scoop I picked up somewhere, and you can just basically measure out, each of the three ingredients, just equal parts of each, 1/3 to 1/3 to 1/3. But it is very important, if you want to try making your own medium, that you use good quality ingredients and you use the correct ingredients. The first thing I'm going to say right off the bat is, because one of my viewers asked me about this recently, if you're making a medium with Dammar varnish in it, you cannot use petroleum-based thinners. So like terpenoid and the odorless, like the other odorless thinners like that are made from petroleum byproducts, you cannot use those with Dammar. It will not work. The Dammar will, I don't know if it will actually curdle, but it messes it all up, and it'll ruin it because it's not compatible. So if you're going to make this medium with the traditional Dammar linseed oil, you have to use genuine turpentine. And the best quality turpentine I found is this Diamond G Forest Products turpentine. I'll put the link to their website in the description. You want to use the best quality turpentine for fine art purposes. Please don't go to the hardware store and buy the cheap stuff that they sell at like Home Depot. Even if it says pure gum spirits of turpentine, the stuff at Home Depot, at Lowe's, at the hardware store is not. It's full of all these impurities. It's not made from the right kind of trees, and the smell is very strong. It's very toxic. Now, even this kind of turpentine, you have to use this with good ventilation. Don't ever use this in a closed room. You have to open a window. You have to put a fan. You have to get a good quality carbon air filter, something like that. A fan in the window is the least expensive and easiest way to keep ventilation going. Even the good stuff, you have to keep it ventilated. So that's very important. But the really, really good, high quality, 100% pure gum spirits of turpentine that you can use for fine art painting materials does not have that horrible putrid smell that the hardware store stuff has. And as you can see in this bottle, good turpentine should be absolutely clear. It should look like water. And so this is made in the USA. They make it from Slash Georgia Pines, and the good stuff smells like a nice combination of pine trees and licorice. Now, if you're a person who's sensitive to turpentine, you may have to choose one of the more modern Alkyd-based mediums rather than the traditional medium. Some people have a real problem with it, even if they keep the area ventilated. Fortunately for me, turpentine doesn't bother me in low amounts. But so if you're going to make this traditional medium with the 1/3 linseed oil, 1/3 Dammar varnish, 1/3 turpentine, just remember, get the best quality. Diamond G is really good, and you have to use genuine turpentine because of the Dammar. Now this is a big bottle I got of Dammar varnish. I haven't opened it yet, but this is what it comes. You can just buy it pre-made in the bottle. So it's just 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. And what I actually use, rather than regular linseed oil when I make my medium, is I use, and you can try this as well, I use this black oil, which is a special kind of linseed oil. Now this is made by Old Masters. Again, I will put their website and all the information in the description below, so you can check all these places out for yourself. Now what black oil is it's linseed oil that has been cooked with something that's called sugars of lead. And basically what that means is it means that the lead cooks with the linseed oil, and it makes it, you might think this is crazy when you look at it. Look how dark, and it makes it almost turn like black. It looks like molasses. But oddly enough, this doesn't affect the color of the paint. Because this medium that I made, I actually used black oil, black linseed oil, instead of regular, along with the Dammar and the turpentine. And as you can see, if I squeeze a little bit of that out, it's not really that dark, and when you spread it out, it basically disappears. So if I were to mix that in with my paint, it really isn't going to affect the color that much. And basically the reason you'd mix medium with your paint is just to make it more smooth and easier to, like this paint here is very thick, but if you were to spread some of that out, just for a little demo, and put some medium in it, now you can see the paint flows very smoothly. It glides onto the surface. And the nice thing about the black oil is that it dries, because it's got the lead that's been cooked into it, it dries pretty quickly. So this will start to set up and dry overnight. So it kind of makes your paints dry a little faster, so you can layer a little bit more quickly if you use a layering method in your work. And this is, of course, you do have to be careful with this because it contains lead. But the thing is, one of the frustrating things with the whole business of lead being toxic and everyone freaking out about it and banning lead paint products, I guess I heard recently lead white's been banned in Europe, which is awful. I feel really bad for the artists over there who can't get the lead white anymore. Because the thing is that lead is actually really, really good for oil paintings. And the reason that is because the presence of the lead in the paint film keeps the dry oil film more flexible and more pliable, so that it has a less of a tendency to crack as it ages. So, you see those paintings, old paintings like from the Renaissance that are covered with all the little cracks and everything. That's from the linseed oil layer basically getting old and starting to get brittle, and lead it won't prevent it forever, but it will delay it much, much longer than a painting done without any kind of lead colors in it. So the black oil actually will probably help a little bit. So moving on to the next phase, I want to talk about another medium that's gotten a lot of attention through the years, especially recently, and that is this medium called Maroger. Now, there's been a lot of controversy about this, a lot of controversy about whether it's permanent, whether if you use it in your paintings, it will cause the painting to degrade in a very short time, in a very long time, whether it happens at all. There's a lot of conflicting information, which makes it hard to research because I've tried to do it. So I'll tell you what I know. Basically, the history of this medium is that I think in the 1930s, Jacques Maroger was the curator of the Louvre in Paris. And he got this wild idea that the old masters from the Renaissance, especially the Flemish masters, that this painting medium that he formulated was the secret to the old masters and why their paintings had that glow and translucency that paintings today don't seem to have. And so his theory was that this medium they used was this secret recipe that had been lost through the centuries. So he did all this research and tried to come up with it, and he came up with this medium that he called Maroger Medium. And a lot of artists swear by it. One of the artists that I know uses this medium consistently in his work is David Leffel, who is one of my idols. His work is really beautiful, and so if you have not seen his work, go check it out because it's really beautiful. Now, he actually makes his own Maroger. He's been doing it since he was in his early 20s, since he was a young man. He's from New York City. And I recently saw an exhibit of David Leffel's work at Pepperdine University a little less than a year ago. It was last June. And I very specifically made a point to go up to each painting and examine it very closely, not only face on, but from the side, from a low angle from the side, so that the light would reflect off the surface. And so I checked those paintings very carefully, particularly the ones that he did when he was very young, from the early 50s and stuff, that were, that are now 50, 60 years old. And I can see no signs at all in that work of any kind of cracking or degradation. And these are works that we know he used the Maroger in. So, it probably is okay to use. It's not going to disintegrate within the artist's lifetime. But ultimately, it may shorten the life of your painting in, 100 years or 150 years. Who knows? Everybody's the biggest culprit that's in this is they put an ingredient in it called mastic, which is a type of natural tree resin that they use for varnishes. It's not as common nowadays, but apparently it's the mastic that causes the problem over time, and it causes the paint film to become brittle and get dark. But like I said, there's a lot of conflicting information. So if you want to try this and use it and it gives your paints, I say go ahead and try it. It's probably not going to disintegrate in your lifetime. But the thing about this Maroger that's interesting is it's a gel rather than a liquid medium like the one I showed you before. And the reason artists love it so much is it has this property to it that's called Thixotropic, which means you can see how it's kind of this jelly. Now watch what happens. As I manipulate it and I smush it around, you see how it gets liquidy? And it gets almost like a complete liquid. And then what happens is if I leave it alone for a second, it immediately sets back up and becomes solid again. So you can make it, mushy like this as you manipulate it, but then as soon as you scoop it up on your knife, it gets solid and it doesn't drip or run. See how it's not running off the knife? It gets solid, and that's called Thixotropic. And so if you mix a little in with your paint, it kind of imparts that same quality to the paint, so you can move the paint around and do like impasto strokes, and it gives you more options to manipulate the paint, but then when you leave it alone, it'll set up and stay where it is. It won't drip and run. And the thing with any medium is you want to use only the minimum. I mean, I should have probably said that at the beginning, but that's important. You only want to use the minimum amount of medium that you need to get the paint to do what you want it to do. You don't want to be constantly mixing a ton of mediums in with your paint, because that's when paintings have problems where they start to degrade, after 50 or 100 years or something. They, the resins in the paint, if there's a lot of it, that's what causes the problems. So it's always best to use the medium in moderation. Just, use just a couple drops. If you want to try the Maroger and you're going to mix a little of that with your paint, just mix a tiny bit, with your paints. You don't need to take up a big honking scoop of it and make this all, like half medium, half paint. You don't want to do that. You just want to use it judiciously. So the Maroger is nice stuff. If you want to give it a try, give it a try. It is a little pricey. It's made by this company called Old Masters. They're in New Mexico. It is a little pricey, which is one thing that might deter some people. But a new medium that I found recently that I really like, and I'm getting off using this and going to this instead, is this Italian varnish that's made by Rublev. And just like the Maroger, this Italian varnish, I don't know why they call it varnish, because it's actually a medium, but that's what they call it. It's just like the Maroger. It's a gel. The only difference between this and this, though, is that the Italian varnish doesn't contain any resins. So they took out the mastic and replaced it with beeswax. So this is a mixture of linseed oil. Actually, it's black oil, I think. Beeswax and a little bit of turpentine. So this is a really nice medium that I really like. Just like the Maroger, it dries quickly, so it'll help your oil colors dry overnight, or and set up within a few hours, so you can keep painting over top of them. And it just, it's a medium that you could potentially glaze with because it doesn't have the resins in it, and it is much less expensive than the Maroger. So like a tube, this tube is like, you have to buy this in like packets that come in more than one tube. So it's really hard if you order from Old Masters to spend less than $90 or $95 with them. So it's expensive. But the Rublev, like the big tube of Rublev Italian varnish is, I think it's like $28 or $30. And this small tube is like 11 or 12 bucks. So this is much more cost effective than this, and it works, and it's beautiful, and it's definitely a traditional medium. So definitely go ahead and check out that Italian varnish. That's become my favorite medium to use recently. Now, if you don't want to go the traditional route and use a traditional medium with turpentine in it, which, because all of those mediums I just showed you have turpentine, except of course for the plain linseed oil by itself. But any of the mixed ones that I just showed you, they do contain turpentine. So if that's a concern for you and you're sensitive to it, you can go with a modern synthetic medium. And basically that means you're going to be using an Alkyd medium. Now Alkyds, I think they've been around maybe about 30, 40 years, something like that. And they do something chemically to the oil where they like combine it with alcohol. That's why it's called Alkyd. And I'm not exactly sure what the process is, but it basically turns this into it's almost like a plastic based oil paint or something like that. It's kind of interesting. But the Winsor & Newton makes this Alkyd based medium called Liquin. Now Alkyds will dry within 18 to 24 hours. They are fully compatible with traditional, linseed-based oil paints. They also make Alkyd-based paints where the pigment is ground into this same Alkyd medium that's in the bottle here. And that is kind of a little bit of a gel similar to the Maroger, but this is a synthetic medium. So when this, like I said, this will dry. If you mix this with your paints, this will dry within about 24 hours. It'll dry solid. So a lot of people like that because it dries quickly. It can be thinned with the odorless petroleum based thinners, and it's a little, it's not as toxic. It's a little less toxic than the mediums with the turpentine. Now the problem is, I think, because these are petroleum, the Alkyds are petroleum based, I think these actually smell worse than the turpentine. Like the smell of the Liquin bothers me more than the smell of the genuine turpentine does, because turpentine essentially comes from pine trees. So although it's not good for you to breathe, and it is toxic in a sense, it is also a natural substance that's distilled from pine trees. Whereas this is a petroleum substance, that comes as a byproduct of oil production. So to me, the smell of this, I don't like it. I have a bottle on hand that I use sometimes in case I need to make something dry quickly, but I generally don't use Alkyd based mediums. But try them, see what you think of them. The other option you have, there's this Lukas painting butter, which is another medium you can try. Now that's a very thick gel. Again, this is Alkyd based. But one of the advantages that this very thick gel has is if you mix it with your paint, it almost extends the paint. So you can mix it like this, and the paint takes on that really thick sort of gel-like quality. So that gives you the ability to make, really thick strokes on a canvas. Let's say you wanted to do heavy impasto on a canvas. You could mix it with this and make a stroke like that on the canvas, and that's going to dry pretty much within 24 hours because you mixed it with the Alkyd based gel medium. Now if you just mix that plain linseed oil and you had a big thick stroke like that, it would take months, probably to dry all the way to the very center of that big blob of paint, because oil paint dries from the inside out. So if you're a painter that uses heavy impasto with a knife painting like that, you might want to try this Lukas painting butter and see if you like it. It's actually medium number 5. You have to get this from Jerry's Artarama, because as far as I know, they're the only company in the U.S. that carries the Lukas products. So I'll put the link to them and this product in the description. So that's a basic sort of general look at some traditional mediums that you can try, a couple of the modern synthetic mediums you can try, which are faster drying and a little less toxic. So I hope that you found this informative and that you enjoyed watching it, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. Thanks so much for watching. Go ahead and click on that subscribe button so you won't miss the next video. And why not spread the joy? Be sure to share my videos on your favorite social media. Don't forget to head on over to my website, walcottfineart.com, where you can see my art, read my blog, or when you join my newsletter list, you can win free art. Every month, I'll choose a lucky winner for my email list, and that person will receive a mini original oil painting. There's a chance to win every month, so be sure to sign up today so you don't miss out. Plus, you'll get my fun newsletter. See you next time!